Hey guys, it's Kozak, author of adult urban fantasy, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be doing a full review of Fairytale by Rebeccah Rodriguez. This is her debut novel in her YA fantasy series, The Pixie Chronicles, and I am very excited to be talking about it today. By the way, this is a spoiler-free review, so if you haven't read the book, this is safe to watch. Before I jump into the review, I feel like it's important to tell you guys a couple of disclaimers. The first of which being that I know Rebeccah, we've met here on AuthorTube, and I would consider us friends, so that's some sort of positive bias I have. The second disclaimer is that I primarily read adult fiction, so even though I don't dislike YA per se, there's definitely a lens that I'm looking through that I feel like is important for you guys to know about. So let's start off the review by talking about the cover and book design. I think the cover is gorgeous. In particular, I love the color scheme. I just think it's really aesthetically pleasing and it's just nice to look at. I like the spine. I appreciate having a numerical marking telling me which book I'm reading. A lot of series don't do that and that can be kind of annoying. On the back of the book, you've got this cute little embellishment above the blurb, which I think is really cute. Overall, just a really gorgeous cover design. Also, one thing I personally appreciate is that it's a hardcover book without a dust jacket. I hate dust jackets. They get ripped, and a lot of times the book underneath isn't as pretty as what's on the dust jacket, so I appreciate just a straightforward hardcover book. So with the superficial portion out of the way, let's jump right into the meat of the review by discussing plot, conflict, and pacing. Fairytale is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast told from the perspective of Killian, a young prince who's engaged to someone that he doesn't know. The story begins with Killian arriving at an international peace summit. Later on in the summit, I think several days in, there's supposed to be this ceremony where he's going to be introduced to his fiancée and sort of presented to the international community. In the meantime, he runs into this mysterious and handsome young duke, Duke Fyodor, or Fedya is his nickname, and he kind of is instantly smitten by this duke. Of course, that's a problem because Killian is engaged. So that's the initial conflict of the story, is Killian wanting to find true love and being drawn to this duke when he is tied to this person that he doesn't know anything about and has never even met. Moving on to the conflict, I appreciate that Rebeccah does what I call an evolving conflict, where at the beginning of the story, the main character is focused on one thing and one conflict, but as he grows as a person and as the story progresses, the conflict actually shifts and evolves into something else. And by the end of the story, you have something completely different than what you had at the beginning. That's one of my personal favorite things, so I really appreciate that about this story. My only complaint in this section is the pacing. I wouldn't say it's bad per se, it was just a little jarring at times. Things would happen in the story that were almost random and unexpected and kind of made you feel like you were just being yanked around throughout the story rather than having nice transitions into each important section. Overall, though, I think the author did a good job of pulling me through the story and keeping me interested in the resolution. Next, we're going to talk about setting and description, and I think that was by far the most skillful part of this book. Rebeccah does a beautiful job with descriptions. I honestly would come across sections at times where I would have to reread them and just enjoy and appreciate the wording, the word choice, and just how it flowed. It was really, really skillfully done. If I can explain it in a silly way, it's like the descriptions just made me feel good. You know, they kind of give you chills and make you want to be in that place. And that's a very positive thing to have, especially in a fantasy world that's just supposed to be very mystical and intriguing in that way. So the next section is world building. It's kind of an extra section that I wanted to throw in since this is a fantasy book. The world building overall was really good. I was intrigued, I was invested, I want to read the next book because of the world building. However, I wish Rebeccah had given just a little bit more. Sometimes she would drop in a concept, a term, an idea, and then just brush past it without giving the reader much more to go on. And as somebody who is really invested in the world, I just wanted just a little bit more. One example is at the very beginning of the book, when Killian's coming to the Peace Summit, she just casually mentions warlocks and they're doing something to keep the castle safe or something, and then just passes it. And I was like, wait, I want to know about the warlocks. So I'm really hoping in the next books throughout the series that more is explained and the world building is just kind of expounded upon and filled in and fleshed out. But I don't know, I just wanted so much more because I liked it so much. Another thing that would be great, and this one's not a criticism, this is more just, I don't know, I think it would be helpful to the readers, is to have like a map of the different countries in this world, because I personally am not good at geography and I'm not good at imagining maps in my head. So when countries and kingdoms are being introduced and just thrown at me, I was like, I'll put this one over here and I'll put this one here and this one will be an island and I don't know. So that would be really helpful. So maybe on the author's website or in the next book, there could just be a little simple map just to help the reader kind of visualize. Because if you're like me, like, I can't imagine a map for crap. Like, girl, help a sister out. But like I said, that's not a complaint. That's more just, I think it would add a little more and help the readers just understand. Like I said, though, overall, the world building was great. I am very intrigued and excited for the next story. All right, next category, let's jump right into characters. There are two main characters. You have Prince Killian, who's the main character. This is written in third person, by the way, but it focuses pretty much solely on Killian's perspective. And then you have the second main character, who is the love interest, Duke Fyodor, or Fedya. Besides the two main characters, you have a nice supporting cast. You've got Annette, who is a friend of Killian. She has a brother who's also Killian's friend. I'm going to say his name wrong. I'm sorry, Rebecca. I think it's Melchior? Melchior? I'm sorry. That is probably like way off. And then he is married to... she's a member of a royal family from another country. I can't remember what exact like rank, but her name is Kozak. And then the last supporting character, I think her name is pronounced Marav, but she is an empress of another country. I would say my favorite character is Killian. I think he goes through the best character development, and I love watching him grow and change as a person throughout the story. He starts off as kind of, I wouldn't say he's snobby, like he's not the worst prince, but he's a little self-centered and naive, and just watching his progression was really great and fulfilling for me. So for the writing style section, I'm grabbing this again so that I can read you guys an example, but first I'll just explain a little bit. I think that Rebeccah has a really strong style. Like I mentioned before, her descriptions are amazing. That is a very strong skill she has. No particular weakness stood out. I thought her dialogue was believable, the characters were believable, the action was believable, and I could picture it. That's something that's very important with action, is sometimes you'll have someone describing an action scene and the movements and the placement of people and the things happening, you can't quite picture them and they don't make sense. But in this book, I do feel like I could picture everything that was happening. One small complaint I have, it's like very minuscule, and this applies to a lot of different books. When you have a scene where you're dealing with two characters and they have the same pronouns, you have to be very careful about tagging action and dialogue properly. There were, I think, 2, maybe 3 times in this book where I would have to reread a section because I would get confused if it was Killian or Fedya saying or doing something. It didn't happen a lot, like I said, it was only a couple times, but I would say just to all you writers out there, if you have a scene with 2 people with the same pronouns, be very conscious of that, because it can get a little confusing and trip your readers up. But considering most of this book deals with 2 characters with the same pronouns, I think Rebeccah did an amazing job keeping it clear. Just to illustrate how good her descriptions are and her style, I wanted to read you guys a short excerpt. I chose a section that didn't contain any spoilers. It's in the middle of the book, but like I said, it doesn't really discuss the plot or anything. So this is on page 212, and it's a little more than halfway down the page. To anyone else, Fedya might have sounded patronizing, but as he lifted his eyes and stared directly at him, Killian couldn't move, frozen beneath his gaze. For someone so young, he reflected back a seriousness Killian had never even experienced. He didn't look angry or upset or even sad. It all ran together, tightening into a carefully spun web too complicated to name. I love that paragraph. It's just, everything about it is perfect. The wording, the word choice, the emphasis, the punctuation, just That is a masterful paragraph. I love it so much. And honestly, this book is filled with examples like that, but some of them had spoilers, so I couldn't share them. But as far as style and just Rebeccah's voice as a writer, it's good stuff, girl. All right, the last section is content warnings. As far as adult content, I would say this book doesn't have any. There's some violent content in the book, but I don't think it's over the top or gory, so it didn't personally bother me. But if you're sensitive to violent content, maybe steer clear of this one. And that's all for content warnings. So let's wrap up with my overall impressions, opinions, my score, and who I would recommend it to. I give this book a very strong 3.5 out of 5 stars. A lot of indie books get a bad rap for being poorly edited or the plot's all over the place or whatever, and I think this book proves them wrong. The editing was really good. I found only a couple minor things, and honestly, you can find that in traditionally published work, so that's not some huge hiccup. The reason I didn't give it a full 4 stars is just because of that pacing issue I mentioned before. It's not anything huge. I think it was still enjoyable, but it's just one small shortcoming. So who would I recommend this book to? If you enjoy YA fantasy romance, this is a good option. If you enjoy retellings that don't stick too closely to the original story, this is a good option. If you've been looking for LGBTQ+ romances, this is a good option. It focuses on the romance between 2 young men. And lastly, I would recommend this to you if you have been looking for a good indie read. This book is available currently in hardcover and ebook, and I've heard Rebeccah say that it's going to be released as a paperback, but I just don't know when. So if she watches this, maybe she'll leave it down in the comments so you guys can find out. I just want to close out this review by saying congratulations to Rebeccah Rodriguez. This is a really strong debut. It's a great book. I'm excited for the next one, and I'm especially excited to watch you grow as an author throughout the coming years. As you guys all know and understand, a book that an author releases as their debut is going to be a lot different than the one they release 10 years later. Writing is a constantly developing craft, and I think that's amazing. Rebeccah Rodriguez is a very talented writer, and I expect more great things from her. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this review was helpful. If you're interested in purchasing Fairytale, I'll have both the Amazon and Barnes & Noble links down below for your convenience. I hope you guys have an amazing week, and as always, happy reading. Bye!